I remember it was about the early 70s, and I was in fourth grade. And back then, roughly 1972, thereabouts, it was kind of a big deal when we had a movie in class. There was one in particular, there was quite a few, actually, I remember most of them, but there was one in particular, and you've probably seen it, and it's put out by Walt Disney, and it's the story of Johnny Appleseed. And I pondered that for the longest time. I still do every once in a while. And so if you're not familiar with the story of Johnny Appleseed, essentially Johnny goes out with his sack of apple seeds, and he's roaming the countryside. He has found his calling, his mission in life. And that's what attracted me to the whole story. Because there I am, I was about 9, 10 years old, and I was already concerned with, where am I going to end up in life? What am I going to be doing? Because I knew that I wasn't going to do what my dad did. My dad's, as soon as he got out of high school, he enlisted in the Marines, and he did that for 4 years. And then as soon as he got out of the Marines, he enlisted in the Air Force, and he did that for 20 years. After that, he entered Arizona State University, actually spent the rest of his time just sort of being retired, but he passed away early. So when I saw this whole film about Johnny Appleseed, he's found his calling. They show him he's all happy and it's a sunny day and he's planting seeds on the roadside, and they do a time lapse and these trees start growing up behind him. And then when he turns around, he looks across this sunny valley and there's all these apple trees. And of course, they've all got apples on them, and so he's made a difference in life. He's done something positive. It really stuck with me. Like I said, every couple of years, I would just think, what is my calling? What am I doing in life? What direction am I heading in? Where should I put my focus as far as my natural abilities? What is that? And consciously, I never could really give myself a sentence and say, well, I'm meant to be such and such career or whatever. But as it turned out, I just found myself throughout the years, even as soon as I graduated high school, within a year, I was a teacher, I was a counselor for 4 years to, homeless people, runaways, ex-cons, recovering drug addicts. I was literally thrown into the deep end of the pool. No degree, no nothing, just I had people around me that were some of the wisest people I'd ever met, and I learned a lot from them. And then, of course, just the experience. My calling, what didn't seem to be to go back to college and become a psychologist or anything like that. I just didn't feel drawn to do that, even though my parents had said, hey, we'll pay for everything. They even, had a house and car for me ready by the college, and I turned it down. And I just felt, no, there's got to be some other direction I'm going to go in. So skip forward to about 2019, find myself living in Vietnam. I never saw that coming. I never was a travel, person. I never said to myself, oh, one day I'm going to travel the world. I never was that kind of person. I only moved to the Philippines because my fiance at the time lived in Cebu. So there I am, 2019. And I'd already had one relationship, which I ended. Again, just some irreconcilable differences. And after that, I found myself just peaceful, just at rest. I've talked about it before. It was like reaching nirvana. I was 100%, not 99%. I was 100% content with everything. The climate I was living in, I was happy there in Saigon, enjoyed my routine. I was eating healthy. I didn't feel a need to date. I dated here and there. I think maybe 4 women in the year that I was there. And it wasn't a stress, and it was enjoyable. I had just a really peaceful, tranquil routine. And I really just kind of saw myself coasting through the rest of my life, just enjoying being retired and living in a foreign land. I just really loved it. So then, as many, I've talked about this before, the way I met my wife, I went on a visa run, which you had to do every 3 months there in Vietnam. Back then, they were doing 1-year visas. And so I was going to go to Krabi, Thailand, but then a big typhoon came up at the last minute. And I figured, well, if I got to deal with rain, I want to at least be in the Philippines where I know my way around. So then I called up my buddy Gio and we talked, and he said he was over in Davao del Sur at the time. And because he was in Vietnam with me and then he'd gone back. I asked him how it was, and I figured, well, I got to do a visa run anyway. I'll just book an Airbnb down there for 10 days, and that way, we could hang out and I could satisfy my visa run. And it was on the 8th day that I met through a Facebook app, who is now my wife, V. So we met the following day. Literally, we talked for like an hour chatting at like 6 p.m. And the very next morning at 11 a.m., there we were, face to face, starting our relationship. And then 2 years later, we got married. So as time progressed, a year later, I'm thinking, after spending a year with her, I'm thinking, most women fall out and disqualify themselves usually within the first 3 weeks, definitely the first 3 months. And here we were together for a year, just like two peas in a pod. No big arguments, no issues, none of these horror story items like you hear about with the materialism or the money-hungry family or the cheating or the lying, none of that. Just that she wanted the same thing, a simple, happy life. I even asked her, like I asked most Filipinas, I would ask them, if your life went perfect for the next, 5 years and all your goals were accomplished, where would you see yourself in 5 years? What do you see for yourself? Is it graduating college or living in another country or running your own business? What do you see if there was nothing to hold you back? And most Filipinas didn't have a very solid answer. Some of them had said, yeah, I want to live in the United States, which I don't. Nothing against the United States. I just happen to enjoy life better in the Philippines than living abroad. So when I asked V that question, she was the only one out of all the women I dated in 7 years abroad in the Philippines and Asia. She was the only one that gave the right answer. In fact, the first woman that I dated in Vietnam was amazing. She was like 39 years old. She was a teacher, incredibly beautiful. I mean, like beauty contest beautiful. We were doing so good, me and this Vietnamese woman, for like 2.5 hours chatting there in a Starbucks, our first date. And when I asked her that question, she said, she knew right away. She said, well, I want to live in America so my son, she had a 10-year-old son, so that he has better opportunities in life. Now, I don't hold that against her, smart planning, but right there I knew we were done. And I told her, I said, well, I see myself living in Vietnam. So that was the end of that. So V was the only one that answered the question correctly. She said, well, I just want a simple, happy life. That was it. That was the whole answer. A simple, happy life. So here we are, 6 years together, married, and that's what we have is a very simple, happy life. We don't like to argue. We don't want to argue. Sometimes we have differences of opinion and we got to hammer it out, but we try to get that done like within 6 to 8 minutes, right about there. We have a peaceful life. Like even right now, I'm sitting out here. I'm just out here on the patio and having myself a drink. It's, there you go. It's got some hot water, turmeric, Ceylon cinnamon, ground black pepper, and coconut oil. So that's good for your lower digestion tract. It doesn't taste too bad. So I'm out here just enjoying this beautiful day. He's in the house and I don't have anything especially planned today. I may go to the mall and buy a few things. Been meaning to get a bigger, more robust food processor. But the point being, we've got this really enjoyable life. And so getting back to when I first met her and then a year goes by and I start getting more serious about considering, well, maybe this is the one I've been looking for. Maybe this is the one I'm going to marry. Because I was content. There in Vietnam, I was happy and content to spend the rest of my life there in Vietnam, just enjoying what I had finally reached in my own personal life on a daily basis. So as I started considering, well, here I am, a happy single guy. The world is my oyster. Money's not an issue. Time is not an issue. Energy's not an issue. I can go pretty much anywhere I want to go and do what I want to do. 100% freedom. And then I started thinking about Johnny Appleseed again. And I spent at least a week, maybe longer. And every day as I'm walking down the street to go get some pho or some spring rolls, whatever, or I'm riding my motorbike around the city, or I'm walking out at, Saigon City Mall, Crystal Mall, it was on my mind. I was like, okay, if I'm really going to get serious about getting married, that's going to change everything. Because I've been married before. It's not the single life. It's a whole different paradigm. You got responsibilities, you have to accommodate for the other person. They might be feeling sick or tired or bored or whatever. You've got this other variable in your life, an important variable that you have to accommodate. Whereas when you're single, hey, you're like Johnny Appleseed. You're just having a great day and doing your calling and just enjoying life. Not that you can't enjoy life married. But I started thinking, should I even consider getting married again? Should I? Because life is good. Why mess up a good thing? But at the same time, here I've got V in my life, and she's made it very clear. She doesn't want to just play around. She doesn't want a boyfriend for just 2 weeks. She doesn't want a sugar daddy. She wants to build a future. Now, fortunately, she was totally fine with not having kids from the very get-go. So, in fact, even before we met, she had already resigned it in herself. Well, if I'm with a man that wants a lot of kids, I'll have a lot of kids. If I'm with a man that doesn't want any kids or can't have any kids, then I'll accept that as my destiny. So I had 2 paths now, a fork in the road that I had to consider. One was to continue on as the happy-go-lucky committed bachelor, just going here, going there. And then I had the other road to go down, which was to be in a committed relationship, to be married, the responsibilities that come with that. And I tried to weigh out the pros and cons like I usually do, but it was break even. I know a lot of you have already made up your mind that there's no way it would be break even for you because you want to get married, or for you want to stay single the rest of your life. But there I was at a 50-50 because it came back down to, I asked myself, well, which option better fits my calling in life? Am I divorced twice because I'm just meant to do certain things, whether it's with this channel or in people's lives, as a single guy that I can't do as a married guy? And I pondered that, and I thought, well, what is it that I can do as a single guy that I can't do as a married guy? And immediately I thought, well, it's to help people. Now I can help other expats as a single guy or as a married guy. And that's part of what I try to do with the channel. And also, like yesterday, meeting expats in person and hearing their stories and giving advice when they seem to have a situation to deal with. I could do that as a married guy or as a single guy. But when it comes to women, well, now it's a whole different ball of wax. As a single guy, I could be Johnny Appleseed. I can go and be in 20, 30, 40, 80, 200 other women's lives for varying periods of time. It might be 2 weeks, might be 2 months, might be 9 months that I could bounce in and out of women's lives and leave them better than when I found them. Smarter, more financially focused. If they wanted to go to college and they needed the money, hey, put them through college. And I'm not talking about, I was talking about earlier in another video, I'm not talking about sending her college money with the expectation that she's going to be your girlfriend. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just, hey, you go to get something to eat, you meet a waitress, you end up going out, you find out she'd really like to go to college, she doesn't have the money. Just give her the money for the first semester or even the first year. A buddy of mine did that exact scenario. He asked her to meet him outside the restaurant, and he slipped her enough money to do her first semester, paid for everything and a little bit extra. And then he never saw her again. He didn't expect anything in return. So he just truly wanted to help her out. And there's other ways to help out women, again, emotional support. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can help a woman. And I don't know, maybe some guys don't really care about that. Me, myself, I've always related to women as far as communicating with them, just being in their lives, more so than even the amount of men that I have talked to and counseled and stuff. So there I am. I'm thinking I've got these 2 paths to go down. But if I want to help out other women, and for the time before that, that's what I had been doing. except that I was looking for a relationship. But my big goal was, okay, if this has to end, I want them to be thankful that we met and we at least had whatever time we had together, that they are a person with a wider perspective on life, or they're a person that I helped them, even financially, with, again, just parting ways and, okay, let me help you out and I hope it goes well with you. And that's it. I don't know how many guys can really understand that, because most guys are giving money to women, like I said, with an expectation in mind. It's like, oh, well, I'll pay your rent, but I expect you to be at my place every weekend. They want quid pro quo, something in return. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Johnny Appleseed, who goes down the path and he leaves the world a better place behind him. In my case, in women's lives. But see, here's the thing. If you're married, you really can't give away 50 pesos to another woman, because any normal woman is going to see that as a threat to her security, as far as she's concerned. And it's a reasonable outlook. You, as a husband and wife, your money is communal. I'm not talking about the legal definition. That's a whole other thing. But, you as a couple have committed to going through life together. And so your budget is to build security for the future of your life together. So if you decide to peel off some money to help out some random Filipina, well, she's totally in her right to say, whoa, wait a minute. She's not our problem. That money goes to our future, not to our future and her future. And let alone you want to help 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever women in the future. That's just not going to work when you're married. So there I was in Vietnam, and I'm thinking, how can I better get my mind wrapped around this? And then so I started again thinking about Johnny Appleseed, and I thought, okay, so one way to look at it, if you're talking about your resources, is it's as if you're going to walk down this path as a single bachelor, and there's all these trees that are in different stages of growth. Some of them are seedlings, some of them are 4 feet tall, some of them are really big trees. And you're going to go down that road as a single bachelor, and you're going to like give each tree, as you encounter it, some water. And some of those trees really need that water. Some of those trees don't need that water at all, or they need something else. Again, there's emotional support. There's all kinds of things. But the other path, as the married man, is you're going to go down that path and you're going to set up a home next to one tree. And every day you're only going to water that one tree. And going over the years, that one tree is going to grow in a very healthy way. It's going to have everything it needs: water and care and pruning and mulch and everything that one tree needs to really thrive in this life. All your resources are focused on that wife, and you're going to make her life pretty damn awesome. Whereas if you go down the Johnny Appleseed route, you'll be able to look back and go, well, I made life a little bit better for a short period of time for a lot of women. Some needed companionship, some needed wisdom, some needed advice, some needed guidance. But you gave something to 50 different women in your life and made their life better as you left than before you arrived. And I thought, well, which one means more to me? Does it mean more to me to go for volume and have a lot of great interactions with a lot of women? Or do I want to go for the brass ring, invest my time, my money, my energy, my resources into one woman as my partner in life and have the satisfaction of seeing that grow? And then I guess what the tipping point for me was, I'd already been doing the Johnny Appleseed thing for 7 years. To varying degrees, I had either relationships or short-time flings or friendships even with attractive Filipinas that just weren't looking to be involved with a foreigner. They just wanted to be friends, and that was it, and I was okay with that. I even helped out their parents once in a while, not because she was my girlfriend, but just to help them out, just because I knew that they were in need. So I thought to myself, I've already done 7 years of that, and it's been great, and it's been satisfying, but I only have so much time left in this life. I thought, I've had 2 previous marriages, didn't quite turn out the way I wanted, what I had aspired to and hoped for. And I thought to myself, I want to know what that is. I want to know what a good marriage is, because I saw it with my mom and my stepdad. They had a fantastic life together. They were like 2 peas in a pod. They only knew each other 5 days and they got married. I don't recommend that. But they were married for like 35 years till he passed away from cancer. And they were like 2 peas in a pod. Every day I would just see them and I would go, that's what I want. I want that kind of relationship. There was no shouting in the house. There was no arguing. They rode to work together. They came home from work. They grocery shopped together. They bought plants. They were both into gardening. So, they would spend their time at the nursery or out in the yard. They enjoyed being next to each other. They had a very wonderful, peaceful marriage. And I thought to myself, that's what I want. I want to know that I can have that, because so many of my friends and myself shot for that and it all fell apart. It's not easy. It takes a special combination of skills and luck and personalities and patience to have that. I saw it as something of a challenge. It's like, this is something that has a high fallout rate, kind of like qualifying for the Navy SEALs. Lots of guys try, lots of guys fail. But the guys that can make the grade, that can make it happen, I've met 1 or 2, and they're very unique, capable, strong individual. And so that was my choice. My choice was, I'm going to go for it. So I did. I waited another year. By then it was 2 years that we'd been together. I had a pretty good lock on her character. It was very consistent over 2 years in the big things, the small things. And now we've been married 4 years, 6 years together, and it's pretty great. Every once in a while, I feel like, I did give something up to have this. There was a cost. You can't have a great marriage and then have other women in your life. And yet I see guys trying to do that all the time. And it goes down in flames every single time. Even if they're not married, they've got some live-in girlfriend. And then she goes to visit her mom and dad or something, and then he sneaks in a side girl. Or he's got her living at his place and he's sneaking in a side girl out in town, quickie hotel, whatever. It always ends in disaster. And justifiably so. I usually hear the men's side. It's like, oh, she cheated on me behind my back after everything I did for her. She cheated on me and lied about it and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you've got a right to be pretty pissed off. But what's sauce for the goose is good for the gander. If he's out there cheating, she's got every right to be pissed off. So do I regret the decision? Not at all, because I could have spent the rest of my life bouncing in and out of women's lives, doing the good that I could do, and been satisfied with that. But like I said, I feel like I've done enough of that, and I was running a lot of these ethical questions even recently through ChatGPT. And one of the things that came up was, you can't help everybody. You can't put it on yourself to help everyone. Whether it be the poor or women or anything, you can't fix the world. And I've had the world on my shoulders for like 40 years. Like I said, just working with the people, the homeless and stuff, trying to get them back on track. And what I realized even back then is that it's like an endless pit. It's never ends. There's always another one and another one and another one. And even the ones that you helped. The problem wasn't their circumstances. The problem wasn't that they didn't have an opportunity. The problem is them. They just don't want to pull it together. They don't want to do what's necessary to have a functional life in society. And sadly, that's happened with some of the Filipinas that I helped. When they were sick, I remember one, I really cared for her, and she was my girlfriend for a while, and it didn't work out, but we still hung out after. I remember one time I was texting with her, just seeing how she was doing, and she said she had the flu. And she had relocated. She was kind of short on money. And anyways, so she goes, well, if you could help me, I just need some BioFlu and some paracetamol, which is very inexpensive. We're talking like just 10 pesos a tablet. It's nothing expensive. You don't even need a prescription. She goes, if you could just get me that. She goes, I've got this flu really bad. So I got the medicine. I got electrolyte water. I got her some cup of noodles, just simple stuff and some fruit. And I hadn't been to her new place. And she was literally living in this, like, under the bridge. Somebody had, like, hammered together a shack under the bridge. And there was a water pump that everybody living under the bridge was sharing. And I go in there and she was just weak. You know how you get when you got the flu, you feel horrible. Your sinuses are all jacked up and then you're tired and all that. And we had like a good moment there to just make her soup and get her medicines. And then I left and she got some rest. But then later she took a path that I just really wasn't happy about. I had hoped for a better life for her than the way it went. And so looking back, yeah, you can go out and you can try to help people. And I have, and I don't regret it, even though many times it did not work out. And that's part of what tipped the scales for me was even despite the bad odds, I'm going to commit to a relationship, a marriage, invest everything I have into making this work, making this a peaceful, joyful life, a good future. And if it turns out I just ran off on a third fool's errand, well, then so be it. At least I can say I gave it everything I had and I tried. Now, I don't plan on going bankrupt and destitute in the process. You know, I've seen too many guys do that. You know, I have fail stops in place. So, you know, if everything did crash and burn, well, I'll just pack my my clothes and my computer gear and I'll be right back in Vietnam. I already have my peace and tranquility and I know how to preserve it. So just something that maybe you have or haven't thought about. What do you want to do with your life? In my case, it was these topics, but you know, there's more callings in life. And does it even matter to you? Does it concern you at all to make a difference in this life or to pursue maybe what you were meant to do? Maybe that doesn't even cross your radar. Maybe it does. And if it does, it's something big enough in life to really give some thought to really think, okay, where do I want to invest myself? My time, my money, my energy, my passions. Where do I want to put that? Because what you don't want to do is just sort of plod one foot in front of the other day after day. And then there you are at the end of your life going, man, why didn't I get around to doing something? What do I have to show for my life? You don't want to be in that position. I don't care if a person is 70 years old. If you spend the last year of your life passionate about a calling in your life, something you feel you were meant to do, better to do that 1 year than to just give up. So, love to hear your thoughts on it and see you there in the comments.